A few months ago, the company Opal kindly sent me out their Opal C1 webcam. They're calling it the first professional webcam, offering DSLR quality on a webcam for the first time. I've been testing the Opal C1 over the last few months to find out exactly what this webcam can and cannot do. So what I'd like to do in this video is talk about who Opal are, talk about the Opal C1 specifications and features, and then I'd like to show you firsthand the footage from the Opal C1 so you can see for yourself what this camera can do. We'll also take a look at Opal Composer to show you how you can use their software to tweak the output from this webcam. The Opal Camera Company was founded in San Francisco in 2020, and it was funded by many top players in the tech industry, including co-founders of Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch. But one of the investors you might be more familiar with is tech YouTuber Marques Brownlee, who included the Opal C1 webcam in his Everyday Tech video in January 2022. Design is always subjective, but I do think the Opal C1 webcam looks great. It was made with aluminium with a nice painted finish on top, with less than 2% of the webcam being made with plastic. At the base of the Opal C1 is a 1/4" tripod thread, and you can use that to attach the camera to tripods and accessories so that you can position the camera exactly where you want. But the camera does come with its own mount, and you can use that to position the camera on top of laptops and on top of monitors. The Opal website promotes the fact that the C1 offers great low light video capture, smooth focus and true colours, and all of that happens because of its 4K Sony sensor. It's a 7.8mm sensor that has an f1.8 aperture, and it can record up to 60 frames per second. The Opal C1 also has a mesh of microphones at the front of the webcam, and these allow it to isolate your voice and cut out background noise. The Opal C1 is available in white or in black. You can purchase it from the official website for $250, but depending on where you are in the world and where it's getting shipped to, the total cost may be closer to $270. The Opal C1 is by no means a cheap webcam, but it is a premium product and it does feel like one from start to finish. The camera is packaged incredibly well, and when you open up the box you'll see the camera itself, you'll see the Type-C to Type-C connection cable, and you'll see the mount and the mount key. There's also a card, a start guide, that helps explain how you can set up the camera and get started. The first version that Opal sent out to me was the white version, and I was incredibly impressed with the design of the camera and also the video quality. But during my tests, I did experience a lot of issues with the built-in microphone, where it was buzzing and the audio quality was just not as good as what you would expect. My initial suspicion was that this microphone problem was being caused by a driver issue or a firmware issue. But I spoke to Opal about this and they suspected that it could be caused by the hardware. So they kindly shipped out another Opal C1 webcam to me, and this time I opted for the sleek black version. So I may be one of the few people that has both the white version and the black version of the Opal C1, but I personally cannot pick a favourite colour. I think both colour schemes look great, and I think that most people who buy the Opal C1 would be happy with either colour scheme. There's two things that I want to talk about before we move on, and both of those can be found on the Opal fact sheet. So if you go to the website for Opal C1, you'll see specifications, you'll see features, you'll see all the marketing material, but they have a download for their fact sheet, and the fact sheet tells you about the company, what they're planning to do with the product. But there's a page there that tells you two things which are important and you have to know. The first one is that whilst this is a 4K webcam, they recommend downscaling to 1080p when you're using it for video calls. And the second thing is that this webcam is only compatible with Mac. Let's talk about the first point. The Opal C1 records video using a 4K Sony sensor, which is why the website and the box continue to promote the fact that it is a 4K webcam. But unfortunately, after they launched the Opal C1, they realised that many video conferencing apps such as Zoom and Teams etc. had issues with the Opal C1 when it was recording at 4K. So to address this issue, they downscaled the resolution from 4K down to 1080p. This addressed the compatibility issues, but the camera did get much hotter as a result of it. So what they've been doing is reducing the heat via firmware upgrades. In practice, what all of this means is that the default camera resolution out of the box is 1080p, but you can go into Composer and change the camera resolution from auto to manual, and that allows you to change the resolution to 360p, 720p, 1080p, 1440p, or 4K. I do respect the fact that Opal have recognised that there is a problem when recording at those higher resolutions. They are trying to address the problem with software updates, and they have said to customers, look, if you want to, you can go into Composer and you can change the resolution from 1080p to 1440p or 4K. In my own testing though, when I was recording at higher resolutions, after about 10 minutes or so, the camera would get extremely hot. And when that happened, the camera would disconnect and it was completely unusable. And then you had to let the camera cool down for about 10 to 20 minutes. The other issue is platforms. You're not getting support for Linux here. You're not getting support for Unix, for Windows. This is Mac only. So one of the first things I did when I got this webcam was connect it to this Windows PC. And it works. I had this connected to OBS and the raw image from the camera is quite good. I was actually quite impressed by the fact that with no drivers it did perform quite well. But you are limited with what you can do with it. In OBS, for example, you can adjust the white balance and the focus and the exposure, but all other options are grayed out. So you're quite limited with how you can tweak the picture and you have to rely on good lighting. The reason for that is Opal have released Opal Composer, and that application is designed to control this camera. So if you're a Mac user, Opal Composer allows you to control distance, lighting, bokeh, the special effects and lots of different things like that. And that lets you get the most from this webcam. And it really does make, the video quality here excellent. But unfortunately, that application is only available for Mac right now. Now, when this came out in 2022, they promised it was going to be available for Windows within a few months. A year and a half later, it's not there. And I reached out to them a few weeks ago and they said that they're scheduling it for Q3 in 2024. So a year from now. So by the time you watch this video, and maybe even a year from now, this will still be a Mac only webcam. So until they address that issue and they release Opal Composer for Windows, Linux and other operating systems, this has to be considered a Mac only webcam. So that is another thing you have to bear in mind before you buy this webcam. So how does the Opal C1 perform? Well, from an audio perspective, I had high expectations because of the webcam's mesh array of microphones, but I have been disappointed with the output. One of my biggest complaints is that there is no way to control the audio. With nearly every microphone out there, you can go into your audio settings and you can adjust the input volume, otherwise known as the gain level, but that's not something we can actually do here. That would be less of an issue if you could control things through Opal Composer. But we're a year or two down the line and there is still no audio controls built into the Opal Composer software, which means that there's no native way to adjust the gain level or enhance the audio in any way. The lack of audio controls is something I think many people could live with if the default out-of-the-box audio was good. What you're listening to just now is me speaking to the Opal C1 and I'm recording myself through OBS using the Opal C1's built-in mesh array of microphones. And you might be able to hear some of the issues here. The problem is that the gain level out of the box is set too high, which means that the noise floor is higher too, which means that if you don't modify the audio, you're more likely to hear the noise floor, kind of like light buzzing electrical noise, but you're also more likely to peak, which means that your audio will start clipping because they think you've spoken too loud, you're just speaking normally, but because the gain level is high, you're more likely to clip. So I'm still recording with the Opal C1 stereo mesh array of microphones, but what I've done in OBS is reduce the output by 10 decibels. This gets me closer to an acceptable recording level where the noise floor is lower and there's less chance of my audio clipping. So just as a comparison, what I'm going to do now is just quickly switch to the MacBook Pro's default built-in microphone. So what you're hearing now is the microphone that's built into the MacBook Pro. I haven't reduced the audio. This is just out of the box audio that the MacBook Pro will give you when you start recording. And I will now switch back to the Opal C1 mic. So I'm now recording again with the Opal C1 microphone. So it is unfortunate that the Opal C1's microphones did not match expectations, but on a positive note, the video output is excellent. I was incredibly impressed with the video quality that the Opal C1 offers. It really does punch above its weight, offering video footage you would expect from a dedicated camera. And if you launch a camera through a video app such as OBS, and then switch back and forth between the Opal C1 and the MacBook Pro's built-in webcam, the difference in quality becomes apparent. The default video settings for the Opal C1 are, in my opinion, very good, but you can use Opal Composer to improve the picture a lot. Now, if you're just jumping into a quick video call, you'll probably just use the auto settings, and I think that's going to be fine in most situations. The only thing I'd recommend checking is focus distance, because when you select auto, the autofocus does do a little bit of searching in certain situations, but that's quickly remedied by just setting the focus distance manually. The optimal video settings will depend on your environment, what lighting you've got, etc. But if you do want to improve things, Opal Composer gives you a lot of options. There's tools there to change the bokeh, to change the zoom level, the distance level, lighting, colors, effects. And you can use this to make the footage pop and make your skin tone look a lot better too. You just have to spend some time messing about with the colors and trying to get that picture the way you want it. What I'd like to do now is give you a closer look at the Opal C1 and then share my thoughts and my experience of using the black and white version over the last few months. So if I jump over to my overhead camera, you can see that I have both the black and the white version, and I really do love the design of these, and I cannot make a decision as to which one is best. I think both the black and white version look great, and you know, you can see the specs there, the kind of little spec design there on the black version. It's also on the white version, just you can't see it because my lights are maybe a little bit too bright, but that design, that little pattern design is on the white version too. So both designs look great. Quite weighty for the size of them, but I do love the fact that these are small, so much smaller than the Logitech Brio, and in comparison, the Elgato Facecam cameras are massive compared to this. This is really, really small in comparison. And we've got the lens protector, keep a hold of that, very easy to lose. The build here is kind of aluminium, it acts like a heat sink to cool it down. And at the bottom we've got the stand. You can use a tripod if you wish, and then it says Opal Camera, should say it there, Opal Camera Inc. There you go. And then you've got the Type-C cable, Type-C to Type-C, 1 meter, 3.3 feet long, maybe a little bit more when you uncoil that. But yeah, the unboxing experience, the presentation is great, the design is great. It does feel like a premium product, and you know, that's one of the attractions of buying the Opal C1. And the other attraction of buying this webcam and any webcam is the webcam video quality. And that is what I've been impressed with the most. This produces a very good picture, almost as good as, say, like an RX100 series camera from Sony. It really does kind of punch above its weight considering the small sensor size. So the video quality was excellent. I used it without adjusting settings a lot, but I did find the autofocus in certain situations was breathing in and out. So it was better to set the distance manually in Opal Composer. A very easy fix, and it's just something that a lot of cameras that have manual controls, you know, have to deal with. You have to get that focus right. Even this camera I'm using just now has that issue. So yeah, you just have to manually adjust that. And excuse me, in Opal Composer, there's a lot of manual controls, the kind of controls you would expect to see with a dedicated camera. Changing the colors, the white balance, the zoom, the bokeh. You know, these are kind of pro level settings. And if you spend time with it and you get your lighting right, you know, and everything's okay, you'll get a really good high quality picture with this. Now, those are the positives, but as I've said through this video, there are negatives as well. And you cannot go into a purchase for a camera like this blind. You have to be aware of the negatives. You have to be aware of what it can do and what it cannot do. And my expectation of any microphone on a webcam is low. I always expect them to be terrible, and that's to be expected on webcams like this where you can't even see where the mic is. But here you've got this big mesh array of microphones, so I expected the microphone quality to be good, but it wasn't. You can't change anything in Mac OS. You can't change anything in Opal Composer. I mean, that's disappointing. They really should have given you some audio controls from day one. You have to be able to change the gain level. And ideally, you want some noise suppression and cancellation and different things like that as well. Those are not there. So what you're left with is a very sometimes tinny experience, but the audio peaking is probably the biggest issue. And there was a lot of situations where it was almost like interference, where the webcam, the cable, the laptop, nothing was moving, but there was just like a crackle. So yeah, very disappointing. Something that should have been a pro turned out to be a con. The other thing is overheating. This does have a 4K sensor, so it does make it a 4K webcam, but they do give you the option of recording at 4K or 1440p as well. But they do recommend also scaling it down to 1080p because of the overheating issues. Now, I was not there for the first 2 years of, first year and a half of the Opal C1's life. But through my tests over the last few months, and even my tests today, when I was recording with this at 4K or 1440p, I got like 10 minutes or so and it started overheating, and then I had to disconnect and then just let it cool down for another 10, 15 minutes. Now, the worrying thing was that there was one time when it overheated when I was recording at 1080p. Now, I don't know if that's because I've had my lights on, because the room is hot, but that's also worrying because, I'm living in Scotland. It's not a hot country, so you'd expect it to happen less here. So that was a little bit worrying. So I think they've still got a lot of work to do there as well. And because of that, I think that this has to be considered a 1080p webcam. It really does. Now, depending on what you do, I think for most people that's not an issue. I mean, if you're doing video conferencing calls, a good 720p cam is good enough. And so I think this would be good enough in that situation as well. If you're doing any kind of content creation, if you're doing Twitch streaming, game streaming, then the webcam is going to be small. It's going to be in the corner. So it might not be an issue either. So just accept the fact that moving forward, yes, they can improve things slightly with software, but there's obviously a fundamental hardware issue here that's causing it to overheat. So it's best to consider this to be a 1080p webcam. So there are some negatives there. And moving forward, I guess there's an asterisk that, that how this story ends at this point is up to Opal. Now, the positive thing is that over the last month, they've rolled out more updates for the firmware and also to Opal Composer. That's encouraging that they're still doing updates. They're still trying to improve things. And, over the next year or so, we'll hopefully get a number of software upgrades that are going to address a number of these issues. The uphill battle that they've got is that, by the time a lot of these things are ironed out, this webcam will have been out for 2 years, possibly 3 years at that point, and technology does not stand still. So I really do appreciate Opal sending these out. They could not have been nicer. They put no pressure on me at all to say anything. In fact, they just ignored it. They just went, "We're sending you out a webcam." That was it. I never heard from them again. And then I said, "Oh, there was an issue with the audio." They sent out another one. Not heard from them again. I do like that approach. As a YouTuber, I do like the fact that they've just said, give us an honest review. And my honest review is that there's a lot of positives, but there's a lot of negatives. And hopefully over time, those negatives will be eliminated and we'll be left with a good webcam. And certainly from my point of view as a content creator, I'm going to try and integrate this into my workflow somewhere, keep it as a 1080p webcam and see if I can integrate it into a different position. Because this can still work with Windows. I know it's not ideal. I know you lose a lot of the settings. You don't have Opal Composer, but you can still use it with Windows, and I'm going to mess about with that. So many thanks to Opal for sending out. Many thanks for watching this video. I hope you've skipped around to the part that was relevant to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, so please do leave a comment below. And as always, don't take everything I say as gospel. Do your own research online, check out Reddit, check out YouTube, look at other reviews out there so that you can make an informed decision as to whether you should buy this yourself. Until next time, take care.